Julius Erving's all-time resume is impressive and stacks up with many of the pantheon-level basketball players. He played 16 seasons between the NBA and ABA. He appeared in over 1,200 games. Every single year he played professional basketball, he was an all-star. 11 of those in the NBA, 5 of those in the ABA. He was a 3-time ABA MVP and a 1-time NBA MVP in 1981. He was even runner-up in 1980, and he was a 7-time All-NBA finisher. 5 of those came on the first team, and of course he was 5-time All-ABA. 4 of those came on the first team. So the question is today, how good was Julius Erving actually? Let's take a look. Dr. J was a top 5 to 10 NBA player by my estimation from 1977 to 1984, debatably even higher from 1979 to 1982, where he was arguably a top 3 to 5 player. He was the best player on 2 ABA champions, the 1974 and 1976 Nets, and was the best player on 3 NBA runner-ups, the 1977, 1980, and 1982 76ers, and he was the second or third best player, depending on how you want to argue it, on the 1983 Sixers that actually won the NBA championship. So the question is, what works for Doc's resume? He has all the accolades, he has the peak, the prime, and the longevity that you want in an all-time basketball player. He was a very good and consistent playoff performer and a great teammate to boot. Now, a lot is made of his ABA versus his NBA career, so let's take a look at it. Doc had strong skills across the board. He was a great scorer, very good rebounder, and his otherworldly athleticism goes without saying. I also think he's extremely underrated as a floor raiser. He's a guy who never played on a sub-500 team, and he never missed the playoffs. The 1974 Nets were debatably his best ABA team, but 1976 is his best individual ABA run, especially the playoffs, where he averaged a godly 28 points per 75 possessions, and did so on a plus 8.7% relative true shooting percentage. And he did this despite not as good of a supporting cast at his disposal. New York would beat David Thompson's Nuggets in the finals, where in the finals, Doc had averages of 38 points and 14 assists on 59% field goal percentage. Now, when he transitions to the NBA in 1977, the Philadelphia 76ers were loaded, but they ended up losing in the finals against an all-time Portland team, but to no fault of Doc's, where he averaged 37-5. They mainly lost because George McGinnis, Dr. J's second star, folded harder than a church chair by shooting 39% from the field despite being a 20-10 guy that regular season. The 1980 and 1982 76ers took a couple of games off the Showtime Lakers in the finals despite being pretty weak compared to the 1983 Philadelphia 76er team. Mo wasn't Mo yet. Daryl Dawkins was never really a star, and Andrew Toney wasn't an all-star until 1983. As for Dr. J, from 1980 to 1982, he averaged 22, 7, and 4 with 4 stocks per 75 possessions, and he was an above-average shooter from the field each year. Now, as for the raw numbers, Doc's ABA regular season career, he averaged 24, 9, and 5 on about 19 field goal attempts per 75 with a 108 true shooting plus. For the NBA, he averaged 22, 7, and 4 on about 17 field goal attempts per 75 on a 105 TS plus. Not much of a difference. Now, critics will hold his NBA production against him for not being as gaudy as it was in the ABA, but I don't really see an argument for him being any less of a player between 1976 and 1977. Before Bird and Magic's prime, he duked it out with Kareem and Moses for best player in the world, again from 1979 to 1982. Now, there are some common critiques for his resume as an all-time player. You could really sag off of him and he wouldn't make you pay with a jump shot. He should have been a better defender for his size. He did lose some relatively big series in his NBA prime. He did have his knees start to turn on him around the turn of the decade. You gotta curse those 1970s hard floors. But the case for Doc is much stronger. He was one of the most exciting, important, and influential players ever. He excelled at finishing in transition like no one outside of LeBron, Giannis, and Barkley. He was an important black role model and star during a still hostile 1970s for athletes. Ultimately, what happens to basketball without Dr. J? Elgin Baylor and Bill Russell made the game more vertical than ever, and Dr. J took that idea and cranked it up to 11. His 1976 free throw line dunk remains one of the greatest basketball moments of all time. Going back to 1976, his finals series is one of the greatest single finals performances ever, even if it was in the ABA. His NBA resume alone easily propels him into the Hall of Fame. 4 finals appearances, 1 title, 1 MVP, 5 first-team All-NBAs, and he was one of the league's biggest draws. Now my question for you, where do you rank Doc all time? Top 20? Top 25? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.